Next September, the United States is expected to agree to adopt the Pact for the Future, and this will allow the United Nations to receive emergency powers over the entire globe that could be extended indefinitely. Hello, I'm Mike Bain from Christian Voice New Zealand. Join me as I unwrap this package and show you both how naive we in this country are and the global impact it will have. Taking my own advice to do my own due diligence before I vote in this year's election, my wife and I went to a candidates meeting. Present were 3 sitting national members of Parliament and a couple of wannabes. Now, for some reason, the organiser of the meeting split the audience into 5 groups where the politicians could be questioned in a 10-minute time frame. To be honest, it was a disaster. No one could hear anything, but before I walked out, I heard 2 questions to 2 sitting members. Both questions were the same. Will National, when elected to government, continue its association with both the World Economic Forum and the United Nations? Yeah, these are questions I felt, given the climate of mistrust in this country, neither member was prepared to answer, as they simply had no clue regarding the party's policy on the issues going forward, and fobbed off the question by stating, hey, we were local MPs, and if we wanted to know any more, then we needed to contact the party. Excuse me, but when you're speaking to a member of Parliament, you'd expect better, especially around election time. Now, these elected representatives were either unable or had been warned not to engage on these issues, and yet the average New Zealander wants to know where this country is heading and who's driving government's policy and direction. Well, as it turned out, these 2 representatives, they were vague about anything outside of their prepared talking points. Anything else was considered to be conspiracy theory or just misinformation. No wonder thinking people have so much mistrust in politicians, and let's toss in the media while we're talking about it as well. But many are asking, where is all this going and who's driving it? So mark my words, the Bible talks about a one world government, and it's not too far away. Nowhere in the news have I seen anything about New Zealand's Foreign Minister Nanaia Mahuta's presence at the United Nations and signing the New Zealand people up to a new treaty for the oceans. Now was not the time for what may be an outgoing government to sign the biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction. Surely this would have been up to the incoming government to consider, as there was no pressure for any country to sign before the deadline of September 2025. Now, reading the summary of the treaty, it looks like it could be a good thing for conservation in our oceans, but reading beyond it, it takes control for our oceans away from our government while protecting Indigenous rights. What is interesting, it was on September the 10th, the government's coalition partner, the Greens, released its policy protecting the oceans. Greens co-leader James Shaw obviously was oblivious to the United Nations proposal when he claimed only a Green Minister for the Oceans and Fisheries will transform how we treat the ocean and help fight climate change, protect the marine life we all rely on, and allow our oceans to thrive. The United Nations' continued push for a one-world control and warning bells are ringing, but no one really seems to be listening. Not our government, nor the USA, Russia or China. But next year the UN will host the Summit of the Future, where bureaucrats who make the United Nations are expected to adopt a pact for the future. Now, here at Christian Voice New Zealand, we've spoken about this already this year, but the time is drawing closer by the day, and writers in the US are fearing if it goes ahead, this proposal might be the biggest attempted power grab in the history of the United Nations. If approved, the United States as we know it could cease to exist. The research director at the Heartland Institution and New York Times best-selling author Justin Haskins unleashed in a conservative online magazine called The Federalist. He said although there are numerous radical proposals included in the agenda, perhaps none are more important than the UN plan for a new emergency platform A stunning proposal, he says, to give the UN significant powers in the event of future global shocks, such as another worldwide pandemic. Now, known details of the scheme, he said, include a plan for standing authority for the UN to convene and operationalise automatically an emergency platform. I've spoken about this emergency platform that is being proposed before. Essentially, if there is any sort of a major global shock, the United Nations will be given authority to ensure there is a unified global response to the crisis. So what kind of global shock would trigger these emergency powers? A UN policy paper that was published some time ago explained that a future pandemic, a major event in outer space, climatic events, digital disruptions, or even unforeseen risk would all qualify. Ultimately, just about any sort of a crisis at all could be used to justify activating this new emergency platform. And once it's activated, officials at the UN would have the power to extend the emergency powers that they have been given indefinitely. You know, we saw that sort of thing happen in New Zealand. The question is, do you want the UN to have emergency powers over the entire globe that could be extended indefinitely? Not likely, but sadly, the Biden administration is fully behind this plan and is reported as being comfortable with the United Nations having greater control over the lives of Americans than it has ever had before. Now, I want you to note the timeline on this proposal. It's the same timeline Xi Jinping, the Premier of China, has before him, if he's going to take back Taiwan. September 2024, which is only weeks before the 2024 presidential elections. Of course, this is the reason why there's a rush to have this all in place. With Biden fully behind the plan, the globalists can advance their agenda. But once he leaves, it's going to be a lot tougher. The United Nations, in partnership with the World Economic Forum, are driving centralisation of control of power, the economy and money towards a one world government. Politicians in this country who won't engage with the concerns of the people of New Zealand, they're either unaware of the agenda of these organisations, or they're ignorant or just stupid. Reminds me so much of the politician stars during the anti-mandate occupation of Parliament last year, where they refused to engage. You know, I wish that more New Zealanders understood what it is that the globalists who make up both the World Economic Forum and the United Nations are trying to do, but unfortunately, mainstream media barely talks about any of this at all. So time is of the essence. The next 7 years are of significance. Our politicians in this country should be aware. They need to be asking questions of our leaders. We need to be asking questions of both our representatives and also our media. It's simple. If they want answers about the path that we're on, they need to read and get somebody to explain the Bible, Book of Revelation, and other scriptures found in the books of Daniel, Matthew, and Thessalonians. You know, we live in such perilous times, and those that wish to erode our freedoms are relentless. You know, we either stand for freedom now or risk everything come September 2024.